What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of the Dana White Contender Series recap. It's been a while since I've made one of these, but these were arguably the greatest set of fights I have ever watched, so I had to make another episode about this, even though I thought about not making so because, I don't know, I don't really get that many views on these videos. But yeah, if you guys want to see more videos like this, please make sure to drop a like, comment, and subscribe. But with that being said, though, I'm going to talk about every single fight on this card, starting with Lucas Caldias versus Magomed Zaynukov, aka Jonathan Pork. Now, I will say this, I think Zaynukov's pretty good, right? I know the thumbnail suggests that he's a potential fraud of sorts, but I think the guy that he fought in Lucas Caldias is actually pretty good. All right, this guy's got an iron chin, and he did drop Zaynukov a couple of times, but Zaynukov was able to pick apart Caldas as the fight progressed, and it was getting worse because he was putting a beating on this guy. And I will say though, I don't think he has as much pop as I thought he would. His technical striking is extremely clean, and he was able to get some sweeps and trips whenever he could. But I don't think he has the power to put away top guys in the division. Now, maybe Lucas Caldas just has an iron chin. All right. Maybe that's the case. But I don't know. I might need to see a couple of more fights from him. Maybe he fights a couple of cans. What I would like to see at down the line is for him to fight someone like Ludwig Klein or Rafael Fiziev. I think the striking exchanges will be absolutely exquisite in those fights. So I hope to see Magomed Zaynukov get some names. But for now, I say we build him up, give him like a couple of cans, and then eventually down the line, I would love to see him fight either Ludwig Klein or Rafael Fiziev because the Muay Thai will be absolutely beautiful. All right, now moving on though, we got Adrian Luna Martinetti versus Mark Vologden. All right, I'm gonna have to learn how to pronounce their names because holy shit, these guys put on arguably one of the best fights in the Contender Series by far. All right, these guys went to scrap from the first round, and Mark Vologden, he looked to be the fighter in control early on. He dropped Martinetti, and he was able to just land some nasty ground and pound shots and cut open Martinetti. But Martinetti, he was able to use the knees, the clinch, and just throw a bunch of teep kicks in order to keep Vologden at range as the fight progressed. And he had some nasty elbows up the top whenever they were in the clinch. Overall, this was an absolute cinematic fight. And even in the third round, when Mark Vologden was trying to mount the comeback by rocking Martinetti a couple of times, Martinetti was smart enough to shoot for a double leg and just hold on to position and top control so he can kind of secure the round. All right. Not only did Martinetti show grit, toughness, and the ability to go forward and put his will, he was also able to show high fight IQ. All right. I'm very high on Adrian Luna Martinetti, and I think Mark Vologden is also a fine addition to the UFC roster. And I think Dana White feels so as well because both of these guys have gotten a 25K bonus as well as a contract into the UFC. All right. Both of these guys have a bright future. And I believe that Adriana Luna Martini, however, all right, I think he's going to be uh, someone who can potentially be in the rankings a couple of years down the line. All right. Now moving on, we got Imanol Rodriguez versus Roche Conceição. All right, I don't know how to pronounce these names, but anyways, though, Emmanuel Rodriguez absolutely butchered Roque Conceição. All right, Rodriguez literally has very sharp hands. All right, I would say, all right, maybe it's like Ilya Taboria esque. Right, maybe he's not fighting the same level of competition, and also Rodriguez doesn't seem to have the same level of power, but the hand speed, the technique is absolutely beautiful. Right off the bat, Roque was in a predicament in the striking. Uh, Roque was able to throw a head kick, but then Rodriguez was able to kind of partially block it and then time a beautiful right hand down the pipe, drop him, and from there he swarmed his ass and did not let go whatsoever because Rodriguez was the better boxer who had a lot better pressure and eventually finished them off with an uppercut from hell. All right, Emmanuel Rodriguez. I don't know how he lost in the Ultimate Fighter because I don't really rate that many of the fighters from the Ultimate Fighter. But seeing as how he finished this guy from the Dana White Contender Series in like a minute or so, I say this guy has potential. Right? You know the UFC loves their Mexican prospects, and you know the UFC loves a highlight reel KO artist. So I think Rodriguez is going to be a superstar in the years to come, depending on when the UFC want to, book him for his next fight. All right, now up next we got Donovan Hendrick versus Luis Felipe Diaz. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you when I say this. This fight looked pretty uneventful prior to the finish. Now, don't get me wrong. Luis Felipe Diaz did a very good job of finding the rear naked choke at the end, near the end of the second round. But prior to that, I was not impressed with either guy whatsoever. Right? They pretty much looked pretty sloppy on the feet. All right, Luis Felipe Diaz, for someone who was on a full training camp, I thought he was putting on rather of a competitive, lackluster performance against Donovan Hendrick, who was not only a short notice replacement, but also a heavy underdog going into this fight. Towards the end, though, Donovan Hendrick shot in a takedown, and Luis Felipe Diaz was able to reverse position and eventually get the back. And then once he got the back, Diaz did a very good job of trying to crossface and put him on the mat. That didn't initially work, so he eventually switched up to the rear naked choke and then finished him off in the end of the second round. Right? I don't have that many high hopes for this guy. I could see him losing to a lot of guys in the middleweight division right now. But considering he has decent level grappling, I would say he's gonna be like somewhere around the middle. I say give him someone at the bottom, just let him build up a little bit, and then maybe we'll test him with someone like I don't know, maybe like a Rodolfo Vieira down the line. But yeah, I don't have too much high hopes for him, but he's not bottom of the barrel level in the middleweight division, so I guess that's something. Last but not least, we got Luke Fernandez versus Rafael Pergentino. Yeah, Luke Fernandez just absolutely decimated this guy in 15 seconds. All right. Whoever made this matchup is just pure evil, in my opinion, because there ain't no way these people thought that this was a fair fight. All right. Right off the bat, Luke Fernandez established he's the better striker by far. He's a lot faster. He's a lot more powerful and he just put away Rafael Pennington with a Paganito with a 1-2, and then some ground and pound right after Perganito tried to scramble and go for a takedown. Right, Luke Fernandez. It's hard to tell. All right, he did get a clean KO, which that's what the UFC always want. But he did fight someone who I think shouldn't have belonged in the UFC in the first place. So I would love to see him fight a couple of more guys in the UFC and then make my assessments from there. But overall, this was arguably one of the best cards in the Dana White Contender Series, like ever. All right, that's going to be it for today's video. Leave a comment down below how you guys felt about this episode of the Dana White Contender Series. And if you guys want to see more videos like this, please make sure to like and subscribe so we can get this channel monetized. But otherwise, I will have my predictions out for Charles Oliveira versus Mateusz Gamrot tomorrow. So be tuned for that. And otherwise, I will see you guys later. Peace.